I am so happy to have back here Jeff Eager. Thanks for coming back, Jeff. You're one of my handful of returning guests, so
Thanks,
I
Andy.
didn't scare you off too much.
Great to be back.
um, yeah, obviously you are part of Oregon Roundup, and last time I had you on here, we talked a lot about. You used to be the mayor of Bend, Oregon, as well, which I think is really cool. But yeah, I really like what you've been doing with the Oregon Roundup. I think there's very few places covering Oregon and the state legislature as closely as you do, and what the governor does, and all that stuff. So I just wanted to give you props, and also you just kind of formed a fundraising group to kind of get
hmm
that, promote this stuff even further, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So what I'm kind of the theory behind Oregon Roundup in general is that um, a lot of Oregonians have never been exposed to kind of news and opinion from anything other than a progressive point of view.
Mm-hmm.
And so with Oregon Roundup, I do both original news reporting and some opinion stuff. And I do it on Substack. So I do get some subscription revenue, but that is slow and small. And so I set up this nonprofit called the Oregon Roundup Foundation that's also raising money via donations. It's a 501c3 to help kind of boost the output of the Oregon Roundup, because what I want the Oregon Roundup to do is to have effect in Oregon. And to have effect, we need to increase output. It needs to buy more of my time. I practice law for my real job, and I definitely want to hire on more people and make it into a real like news and opinion source
Yeah.
that makes an impact in Oregon.
Yeah. Like I don't know. I feel like it is already there. I know. I'm sure you'd want to see it grow even further. But yeah, I totally would love to see it as like a full-fledged media group or channel or whatever you want to call
Yep.
it. That's great. So yeah, I'll absolutely subscribe if you want to support that. I just saw the other day that Substack now has 5 million total paid subscribers. Like, it's a
Wow.
growing service,
Yeah.
and it's really kind of part of the new media
hmm
movement, I think. So, um, okay, I wanted to quickly get into like a lot of this topical stuff. I was adding more this morning because there's a lot, but is there anything you wanted to say about, or could you explain to people the Tobias Reed dismissing the audit thing? I was
hmm
trying to, I think I know the gist of it, but could you explain
Yeah.
that?
So it's funny because on the way here, I drove by a La Moda
Oh yeah, there's one up here. Yeah, yeah,
dispensary, and I thought, oh, that's kind of bizarre that they still operate in Oregon.
yeah.
But related to your question, there was a huge scandal few years ago in Oregon where La Moda, which is a cannabis company, was giving campaign contributions to a lot of Oregon Democrats, including Tina Kotek, including our then Secretary of State, Shemia Fagan. Um, Shemia Fagan's office as Secretary of State, she runs the audits
Hmm.
in Oregon, and the audit division was auditing whether or basically how the state of Oregon regulates cannabis businesses. And
So it's a conflict of interest
it's a conflict of,
already.
well, already, and then you have what came out once kind of the controversy started was that Fagan had actually signed a $10,000 a month
Mm,
consulting contract
mm,
with La Moda while her office was completing this audit, which surprisingly enough ended up being very critical of how harsh the state of Oregon's regulatory approach to cannabis is. And one of the owners of La Moda was given a chance to edit some of the scoping for the audit.
oh wow.
Bad stuff. That's really what caused Fagan to be forced to resign.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but her successor, who Levon Griffin Valad, who was appointed by Tina Kotek
So the
once,
person that stepped in. Yeah,
correct?
yeah.
She stood by the audit. She reviewed it. She said and said, you know what, this is a valuable audit. We're going to keep it live on the website
Mm,
as something that people can look at to learn about, some kind of factual description of what Oregon does vis-a-vis cannabis regulation, which frankly shocked me when she did that because La Moda in that whole audit became very politically radioactive
right,
for
right.
Democrats in Oregon in a way that nothing has in quite some time. But she stood behind it, even though it's just completely conflicted. And Tobias Reed, our new Secretary of State, announced this week that he was taking it down. He was, I guess, disavowing the audit, um, which is a good thing.
Mm.
I mean, a
Yeah.
really good
I was
thing.
confused at first because I was like trying to sort through it, but I'm like, oh, I see. Yeah, because the audit was so, you know, there were so many complications and unnecessary interventions and
Yep.
conflicts of interest. And so, but was there any indication of like there'll be a new investigation or anything to that? Or,
Not that I'm aware
okay.
of. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to give people sort of insight on that. The other thing, topical thing, I mean, there's a lot on here I might ask you about, but uh, the stuff in the Oregon legislature right now about union strike unemployment, that's ongoing still,
Yep.
right? Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, the bill has gotten, I think, two different hearings. It's been referred to a couple different committees down
Okay.
in Salem. It's gotten a couple of committee hearings, which means if a bill there's thousands of bills introduced
Right.
each
It's
session.
still in
A
committee.
small percentage of them get a hearing.
Okay.
This bill has gotten a hearing, which means that it's got a decent chance of moving forward. And what the bill would do is provide unemployment benefits to striking workers in public or private sector businesses. So
Any union, pretty
yeah,
much.
so the PAT strike, the
Right.
teacher strike in Portland from a couple years ago, those folks when they went out on strike would have been able to collect unemployment insurance, and there's no other state in the union has
Okay.
done it this way before.
Isn't Washington
Washington is
talking about
looking
it?
at doing the
Yeah.
same thing, right? So they've
Because they're
got a
often
similar
working
bill.
parity. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's like one bad idea
Right.
infects
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
neighboring state, but it's obviously a priority for unions. Even
Mm.
the Oregon bill, it's really funny. It says the bill itself, when you look at it online, it says introduced at the request of AFL-CIO
Mm-hmm.
Oregon. It's like, yep. So obviously, if they can create a taxpayer subsidized like payment system for people who are on strike,
Yeah.
it makes it easier for them to
It
strike.
seems like they're just directly incentivizing
Absolutely.
striking.
And then it makes the unions more powerful. It increases their dues over time. And what that does is then a bunch of that dues money gets kicked back to Democrats in Oregon for campaign contributions. I mean, that's
Mm.
frankly the cycle
Yeah. Yeah.
that we go through. So that this is a big step in that direction, but it would not only incentivize public sector strikes, but we already have a hard time attracting private sector employers
Right.
to
Right.
Oregon.
Right.
We're not gaining private sector employment. We're gaining public sector employment.
Right. Right.
And that's because it sucks to do business in Oregon.
Right.
And this would make it a lot worse especially for some of those larger businesses that might have a unionized workforce.
Okay. So yeah, because I was trying to think, I've been part of unions that were not public unions, but
Hmm.
this would apply
To
to
both.
everything. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, that is wild because yeah, to me, I can see that sort of cycle or loop happening already if that were to pass.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's funny you said that because I've been thinking a lot lately about Portland's economic engine or whatever you want to call it, development, and maybe Bend too in that area. But it seems like yeah, like by and large, it's either government jobs or not-profit jobs, which
Yep.
feed off the government jobs. So that's
Yep.
like the majority of our employment up here right now.
Which is all, I mean, there's no wealth created by public sector
Right,
jobs. There's
right,
no wealth created by nonprofit jobs. You need the private sector employment to actually bring money into the state from somewhere else.
yeah.
Otherwise, you're just cannibalizing the tax revenue that we have here.
That's a good, yeah. I never thought of it that way because I was thinking when you're saying that of Seattle, like pre-Amazon,
Yeah.
now they're just, they had Microsoft and all that stuff's really exploded now. But Um, okay. I'm just kind of going through my list of topical stuff. And like I said, if you guys want to check any of this stuff out, go to Oregon Roundup because you have articles on that's kind of how I
Yep.
itemized all this. Um, you had a thing, this is maybe a couple weeks old now, but about Oregon school performance and Kotek kind of not addressing that. She's kind
Yeah.
of focused on other things.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just want to, is there anything you want to say about that?
Yeah.
And
So in general, um, really to kind of back up a second, I think that Tina Kotek's theory, as presented to the public when she was running in 2022, was that she was not going to be different than Kate Brown on policy, right? They're both very progressive Democrats from Oregon. I think you couldn't find any policy daylight between the two of them. But that the reason why Brown had failed, and I think implicit in Kotek's campaign, was that Brown had failed. Brown was the least popular governor in the state.
Yeah.
She was not popular. But what Kotek would do differently is remain focused on a few key areas and just work hard and be diligent and get stuff done.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and to that end, what she's done is she's set out like 3 or 4 priority areas, one of which is education, and spent a bunch of money on those priority areas, including education, in her first budget. And now she's introduced her next budget and is just calling for more money doing exactly the same thing. In the meantime, the performance of Oregon public schools has continued to deteriorate to the point where we are arguably the worst performing public school system in the United States.
Yeah, I know a lot of the lists were always 49 or
Yeah,
50 even.
and it's not just one; it's a kind of across the board in terms of graduation and in terms of test scores
Mm-hmm,
were the
mm-hmm,
most recent. Our math and reading scores for 3rd and 8th graders were among the worst in the nation.
mm.
And so what Kotek is doing is, and she literally called her budget the stay the course budget.
Okay.
Like, do the same thing, just spend more on the stuff we've been doing, and explicitly so. And so my thought about that is, well, who thinks what we've been doing is working?
Right. Status quo.
It's
Yeah.
costs a lot of money. Oregon spends a lot per student on education, but the results are terrible.
Mm-hmm.
So why are we as a state saying, yeah, that's okay. We can just run back the same set of policies, just throw even more money at it, and it doesn't work. It just frankly doesn't work. Whatever you think why, who knows, right? I think it doesn't work because I think that the unions run the school system and
Yeah.
they don't really care about educating kids
Going
as an
to admin
institution.
costs or
Yeah,
something.
and
Or,
it's
yeah.
but it's just not working, and she wants to keep doing more of the same. She was in Salem yesterday, I think, testifying about getting another $11 billion
Mm.
for education. That won't work. I mean, those of us who have been here for a while remember the gross receipts tax debate, where all of that money was supposed to go into education, and it was going to close the gap, and it was going to make Oregon kids just really excel at education. It hasn't.
Yeah. It
It
seems like my entire lifetime has been that story of
absolutely.
that. Yeah.
And it's always about money,
Mm-hmm.
right? But we're spending a lot of money per student in Oregon. It's not the money. It's the system that is broken. And as long as Tina Kotek, who I don't think really has the capacity as a politician to break from what her ideology truly
Mm-hmm.
is, which is she's a hard left progressive.
Mm-hmm.
And when you need to fix a problem, you throw more money at it, and you throw more state intervention at it, and you throw more bureaucrats at it.
Yeah.
And that's the only way she knows how to solve a problem. The problem is her approach has not solved these problems.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking that whole time, do you think she genuinely believes that, or is that just a political, she thinks that's a political win to throw money at something and that
I,
looks good, you know?
I,
Like, I
I
don't,
think it's both. I mean, I think probably in her heart of hearts, she believes that
it'll have some
if
effect.
she gets to do what she wants to do, that things will get better.
Mm.
I think that's probably true.
Okay.
But it's the easy course for her
Mm.
because that's what her campaign supporters want, right? So she
Right.
gets tons of money from the teachers unions, other public sector unions. They just want more money pumped into the system no matter what,
Right.
because a lot of that becomes union dues over time, and then a lot of that becomes campaign
Right.
contributions
Unions
to.
want the money, they give it back to the
Yep, yep,
politicians, and yeah.
yep. And so in their, the unions benefit whether or not the school system works. As
Yeah.
long as their members are getting paid and they're getting dues, they're fine with it.
Mm.
And it's clearly not working for Oregon kids.
Yeah. Yeah, I know there's definitely, I was curious, I'm sure you heard about the I forget what state it was, but there's like these famous cases now of people that graduated and are suing I'm guessing their state education department because they're technically illiterate or something. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I've heard about that. Yeah.
I'm curious, like as a legal person,
Yeah.
do you think that something like that would work in Oregon?
I don't know. That'd be a good question. Like the lawsuit would be based upon the school system having a duty to teach you how to read.
What they're responsible for.
And then you're damaged by the fact that they don't. I mean, there might be something to that. And
Okay.
I suspect we have a number of folks graduating from high
Yeah,
school in Oregon that don't know how to read.
yeah, and feel genuinely kind of cheated from an education
Yeah.
or cheated out of it. Yeah. Um, okay, I was gonna get your thoughts on. I was gonna shout out this guy. Am I saying his name right? Mark Hester.
Hester. Yep.
Because I thought it was cool. He's writing some
Yep.
stuff for Oregon Roundup, and he used to be with the
Yep.
Oregonian. Okay, or still is. I don't know.
No, he used to be.
Okay,
He's retired now. He was the business editor for the Oregonian for like 10
long
years
time. Okay.
and on their editorial board. And yeah, for over the last month and a half, he's been writing occasional columns for the Oregon Roundup, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
And he's got a much different background than I do. And he's not, his politics are share some things with me, but he's
Not
not,
totally the same. Yeah.
frankly, he's not as conservative as I
Okay.
am.
Okay.
But I think the model that I'm trying to get to with Oregon Roundup is to the right of Tina Kotek, there's a lot of room,
Yeah.
right? Or to the right of your median Oregon Democrat legislator, there's a lot of room. And I talk a lot with more moderate Democrats, kind of middle of the road voters, and that's kind of where I think we need to target. Those are the voters that are persuadable
Right.
and that maybe actually care about results. They're not directly personally profiting from the political machine that we have here in Oregon. And so that's Mark's a great example of kind of how I want to grow the output of the Oregon Roundup and also the diversity of voices,
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
non-progressive voices.
Yeah, yeah. Because the reason I wrote it this when I was doing these notes is 'cause I think he did something about the Portland City Council, and I really liked what he wrote.
Yep.
And I was gonna get your if you have any thoughts on the Portland City Council, and if not, what's also going on in Bend with their city council. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my thoughts about the Portland City Council is it seems like a mess.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was actually kind of optimistic about the Portland City Council
Yeah.
prior to last year's election because I thought Renee Gonzalez was doing a pretty good job, pretty moderate, and the council was doing some things that I thought were in line with what needed to happen up here. After the election, that's all out the window now. And the fact that these new counselors, one of the first things they did was ask for more money for office space and staff.
Yeah.
When the city's facing this budget crisis,
Right.
is
It's all they talk about now at every
it's
meeting. Yeah.
just ridiculous, right? Why are you doing that? Read the room a little bit. In Bend, our politics, we're a blue city now. Like it hasn't been a blue city for very long, but it's a very blue city now. And so we've got a kind of wacky city council that's taken out. There's one big street through the middle of town called Greenwood Avenue. Used to be 4 lanes. They took out 2 lanes of vehicular travel and have these protected bike lanes that no one ever uses. Totally screwed up traffic through town. So a lot of the stuff that happens up here happens on a smaller basis down in Bend.
Okay. Yeah, one of the reasons I was going to ask about it was I don't know if this happened in Bend or if this is going on. I wrote it down here, so maybe it did, but I know that Estacada is getting near rolling back some of their DEI stuff on their city council. Did that happen in Bend?
No.
Okay. There's no chance of that.
They will.
Okay.
They'll probably wait until Portland does something before they do.
I guess that would make sense. Yeah, I was just going to mention that because you had tweeted something about this, and I have just been thinking a lot about it. That somehow this got, and I know there's all sorts of opinions about this, but somehow the DEI thing now got into this DEIA thing.
Yeah.
There's this whole narrative to kind of,
Yeah.
this is also about accessibility.
Yes.
And I don't know if it's because I've had, people on the show talking about ADA law. And to me, ADA law is a very separate thing from what DEI is. But I just noticed that narrative, and it seemed like you posted something about that
it was
too.
so I came across it because it was in a press release from Attorney General Dan Rayfield's office.
Okay.
And I took note of it because he, in that press release, uses diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, and then refers to it as DEIA.
Right.
And that was the first time I've heard of that. So it may be expanding.
It feels,
DEI
I don't know if I'm right about that or where it started, but I feel like that started as like a party line thing of like, this is now called DIA. We're going to start, doing that whole thing. And like I said, to me, they're very different things.
Absolutely.
ADA law has
ADA
very,
law isn't a political issue, really. It's
it's
a
federal
law.
law,
It's a
and
law.
yeah,
And so if someone's violating the law, you can sue.
yeah. And
Um,
whenever you apply for jobs, all the accommodation
right,
stuff, and
right.
that's
So
part of that.
I think it's just a way for them to, I think maybe an acknowledgement that the term DEI has become kind of unpopular now.
Right. Yeah.
So now
Exactly.
we're
Yeah.
not DEI, we're DEIA. And in their minds, maybe that changes the nature of
It's
what it
so
is.
expansive
Yeah,
that
it's like
who would
everything,
want
right?
to go against that, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. I was going to ask about. You'll have to remind me with this because I just wrote down Blobby, and you had a whole thing about
Yeah.
Blobby. Tell people what that it
Okay.
was or isn't.
Oh,
I'll
Blobby.
put a little thing of him on here.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
should. So a few years ago, the Oregon Secretary of State's office paid a vendor, like a communications slash design firm here in Portland,
It was like an RFP
called
process or something.
Happy Lucky, actually.
Oh, I remember them. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah. I don't know if they're still around, but yeah.
and they and they paid him 300,000 bucks to come up with a mascot for Oregon voting, right? So the
Okay.
Secretary of State's office runs elections in Oregon, and what they came up with was this blob named Blobby, who's
Okay.
just,
Creative name. Yeah.
this blob. And then there's other blobs that hang out with Blobby sometimes, but they're not named. But anyway, Blobby would go, like, they would post stuff on social media saying, voting in Oregon is fun, voting in Oregon is safe, voting in Oregon, blah, 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 with Blobby in different animated parts of Oregon, like
Sure.
Crater Lake or whatever.
Okay.
So back when they first did that, I wrote a story about, they spent 300,000 bucks on this. Oh, and Happy Lucky, the design firm, referred to Blobby as genderful, which was my
Okay.
first exposure
Okay.
to that particular word, which
I don't
means
think I've ever heard that.
like
But he's
you kind of span genders
yeah.
and you're into all
I was gonna say
genders.
gender fluid or something like yeah.
Something, I think
Yeah.
it's kind of like that. But anyway, Blobby was a genderful voting mascot,
Okay.
and they spent 300,000 bucks on him, and then used him for the next couple of years, um,
Across the state or
across the state.
okay.
Yes, and so
State communication.
another thing that Tobias Reed did, which I think was good, is he killed Blobby.
Okay.
So he's like, no, this is stupid. We don't need a genderful
Yeah.
blob talking about voting.
Yeah.
And so that's gone by the wayside now.
Okay.
So yes, Blobby and I go way back.
All right. Yeah, and I guess R.I.P. Blobby. I didn't even know he was like, or it was a thing. I guess, but that is funny. It seems like, and I don't know if Happy Lucky's still in business, but that does seem like super creatively lazy. I don't know, but
Yeah,
like you can come up with
yeah,
that in like 10 minutes. I
yeah.
don't.
No, and that's yeah. I've heard from people when I've written about it say, my third grader could have
Right.
created that. And Happy
Why not a
Lucky,
ballot character or something? I don't know.
Happy
Like,
Lucky is one of these. It on their website it just says women LGBTQ owned, which
yeah,
is fine, but you can tell they're politically like aligned,
yeah.
and that probably helped them
It'd
get the
be
contract.
yeah. Just from the brief time I spent in the agency world up here, it'd be hard to find an agency that wasn't
Yeah.
so ideological. Okay, and the next one I wrote down was petulant children. This
Yeah.
came, I think, from a state
Yeah.
rep or something. Is
Yeah.
that right?
Yeah. So there's this guy, state rep Mark Gamba. I don't know if it's Gamba or Gamba,
I've always said
Gamba,
Gamba, I think.
and he's Milwaukee, so not too far from
Yeah.
where we are right now. He was interviewed by OPB a month or two ago, in conjunction with this transportation funding package that the legislature supposedly is taking up at some point. And he said that and he used to be the mayor of Milwaukee. So
Okay.
he's
Okay.
used to trying to get money for infrastructure. He said that in his opinion, voters who vote no on gas tax increases or other tax increases are acting like petulant children.
Okay, that's right. I remember now.
Because they just don't see the higher benefit of approving these tax measures to do whatever it is Mark Gamba wants
Which
to do
is
with it.
pretty insulting to
Oh,
everyone. But
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, Oregonians are taxed more than almost any other state. There's ample evidence that Oregon does a bad job spending the money that it has. I
Mhm.
mean, so I worked on the no on the Portland gas tax campaign,
Okay.
like way
Yeah,
back when
yeah.
they were first instituting it, and we lost barely. But I remember the pro stuff in that campaign was, we're going to have great streets. This is going to fix it. It's going to be safe routes to schools. And you drive around the
No
city
no
now.
potholes and
No,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
like it's still a mess.
yeah.
And
It's like it literally is like 10 or 20 years behind on the
oh
maintenance
yeah,
backlog. Yeah,
yeah. And
yeah,
they said that would all be taken care of,
yeah.
right? And that's just from my experience in local government, that is what happens, right? You have the staff come in and they say, we need more money to pave streets. It's like, well, do you really need, and of course it's always the worst case scenario if they don't get the money that they're looking for.
Right, right.
In my experience, a
Sky's
lot
gonna
of times
fall and yeah,
that's inflated,
yeah.
right? And then, for Gamba to say that you're a petulant child if you don't want to put more money into this system that is broken.
Right.
I mean, that's
And it really is
weird.
broken. I thought you were going to bring up the whole. I know there was the whole ODOT controversy. Like they basically just
Oh
for
yeah.
like $1 billion was like, oh, we didn't
Yeah,
know what
yeah.
happened to it or
Yeah,
something.
no, the Salem Statesman Journal did a fantastic series on ODOT, to the Statesman Journal's credit, about how their internal audits showed we screwed this all up. They lost $1 billion. And all of this running into this legislative session when the big issue is going to be ODOT wants a bunch more money,
Right.
which seems
That's a hard sell when
kind of,
you lost $1 billion.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, you would think so. But that's the mentality of the people who run our state, is that if they just get more, then they can do the job. If we just give more to them,
Hmm.
they can solve our problems. And I'd argue that the evidence is that's
Yeah.
not at all
Seems
what
like yeah,
happens.
the track record
No, it's
is
terrible.
proof of that against that. But okay, I wanted you to kind of this might be a lot, I guess, but um, explain to people the whole controversy and the blowback about the wildfire map. You know
Hmm.
what I'm talking about? That
Yep.
yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So the wildfire map is a map that the state of, and I haven't followed this extremely closely, but a map that the state of Oregon produces that basically reflects the state's view of where there's risk of wildfire
Property risk.
that could destroy a house
Yeah.
or damage a house. That map then informs insurance company decisions and rates. Um, the subtext for it is that even without that wildfire map, I know a lot of people who've had their coverage pulled, even though they don't have claims,
Hmm.
but like whole companies have pulled out of
Right.
parts of the state because it's so expensive to insure here. Same thing is happening in
California.
California.
Yeah.
And so that map then would have driven up, or would drive up, insurance premiums for a lot of people around Oregon. This is a big deal over where I'm from in Bend. So we've got a lot of
Right.
fire risk over
Kind of
there.
desert
Yep.
climate. Yeah.
Yep. So I think the state kind of stepped in it a few times in terms of that wildfire map. I haven't looked at it closely enough to know, but I assume there's some climate angle on the wildfire map
Yeah.
that I've.
Well, I was trying to remember. I thought I remember something about like this. This was like the first major change, or the first time they'd done this, to where a lot of metro areas are now in a different risk category, which, like
Mhm.
you're saying, is going
Yeah.
to drive up all their premiums, and
Yeah.
um, so it just seemed like a lot of people were not prepared for it, and it sounds like they're getting an earful at the state
Yeah. That's
about
what
it
it sounds
now.
like for
Yeah.
sure.
So,
Yeah.
and what is the latest? Are they just
The last I had heard of it was that they had kind of tabled it and they were going to take another swipe at it.
okay?
But
Okay,
that I don't
that
know.
sounds right to me. But yeah.
Yeah, I don't know for sure.
Okay. Um, I'll edit this out. I'm trying to read my writing here. Calling. Can't even read this. Calling or oh, I know what it is. Okay, my writing is so terrible. This is like I guess, a pretty old article that you, or maybe it was just a tweet that you did at this point. But Oregon has a, what is it, a bias hotline or something that you called?
Yeah. Yes, it does. It has the Oregon Department of Justice maintains a bias hotline, um, which is new over the last few years. The purpose being that if you believe you're being discriminated against, um, you can call this bias hotline.
It's not a bully. work
It's
thing. It's
not
just for
bullying. It's for
anything.
anyone.
Yeah.
So like if I thought you were discriminating against me based on
You
my
call him right now, and
ethnicity, I'd be
yeah.
like, Andy's
And is it
discriminating.
only ethnicity and race, or is
No,
it
it's ethnicity, race.
any?
There are a few different categories. I assume like sexual preferences
Okay,
in there. Um,
age, all the
all the
ones. Yeah.
stuff, and you can call them or you can submit it online. And a year ago or so, I did this. I came across this document from 2021, I think, that was like the state of Oregon's like kind of roadmap for diverse DEI,
Mm-hmm.
basically. And it was adopted like early on in kind of the post George Floyd
Right.
world where they were really feeling their oats in Salem about this kind of
Yeah.
stuff. And it's just the most absurd document that I've seen. Honestly, the most absurd government document I've ever seen.
Wow. Wow.
And it's this long thing about how uh, all Oregon employees. So it's basically direction to people who work for the state of Oregon
Hmm.
that the whole purpose of what they're supposed to be doing is to achieve equity, and equity means redistributing resources from to people who are racial minorities,
Right.
basically, and that's
We
so
don't do any.
that's
I was gonna say in Portland, we don't do anything without the word equity in it up here
right,
nowadays.
exactly.
And it's
So
not equality. People confuse them, but
and
yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
I mean the document itself is um, it's blatantly unconstitutional
Okay.
because
Or
it
Oregon or federal or
Oregon,
okay.
well, both, but just looking at the federal constitution, the 14th Amendment says you cannot discriminate
Against
against
race.
people based on race
Right.
at the government level.
Right.
The state of Oregon is telling all of its employees in every decision they make to make decisions based on race.
Mm. So they're
So,
in direct conflict, basically.
absolutely,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it's a ridiculous document. Anyway, I wrote about it like a year ago, and then I don't know how I came across this idea, but I noticed, oh, it was because Oregon was expanding their bias hotline resources,
Mm.
expecting an influx because Donald Trump had been sworn in as
Oh, for
president.
this election.
Yes.
Okay.
And so I was like, okay, well, I've got a bias concern and it relates to this official state of Oregon document.
Right.
And so I sent in a complaint. I haven't heard back. I keep meaning to contact them and say what's
But
going
you
on.
get nothing.
Nothing,
Okay.
but I'm going to pursue it because it that is real.
Yeah.
It is bias,
It does seem,
right?
and it does seem like, yeah, like you're saying, indirect. Both of those, laws are in direct
Oh,
like conflict
it's
with each other.
and it's like the document. If you read it, it's written so poorly. Like it's like a middle schooler wrote
You
it
can tell it was made in haste,
in
probably.
haste
Yeah.
and by committee and by people who hadn't really thought deeply about
Mm.
this. And you can tell that there wasn't anyone in the room saying,
Right.
can we
This
really
isn't
do
gonna stand the
this?
test of time
Yeah,
here.
yeah, no, no.
Okay. Is there any other topical stuff you want to talk about? I have just a couple funny questions at the end. Or is there anything else on your mind you want to bring up?
Yeah, I mean, so the one thing that it's kind of, again, this legislative session is being driven in large measure by what's going to happen with transportation funding.
Okay.
Um,
The ODOT thing is just
the ODOT thing
huge.
is the big thing in the session because that's where the Democrats decided they wanted to go for money. And the they at the beginning of the session they rolled out this tire tax and
Mm-hmm.
where they were going to tax tires at 4%. So anytime you bought tires in Oregon, you'd have to pay 4%.
4% per tire.
4% per tire. So if your tires
Because you usually buy four.
altogether were $1,000,
Yeah.
because tires aren't cheap, you'd be paying $40 to the state.
Wow.
Right. And so, and then the state, while they're talking about, well, we need more money for ODOT to pave streets, blah, 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 blah. You'd think that's where that tire tax money would go. Nope. It would go to, depending on who you listen to, wildlife overcrossings,
Hmm.
mitigation of tire pollution in waterways, and some other stuff, none of which would address this funding shortfall that
Okay.
ODOT says
Okay.
it has. So yeah, I got a hold of that story and I think I was the first one to write something about it. And what I'm hearing is it's probably dead now.
Yeah.
So but that's an example of the kind of thing that I think that Democrats in Oregon are so used to having their way and not having people call them on their stuff that they felt, yeah, we'll just run this tire tax
it'll
thing.
it'll just
And
sail
they gave it a
through.
hearing,
Okay. Yeah.
and it's like, well, the big picture here is we're trying to ask people for a bunch of money for ODOT, and that is questionable. And now we're going to run this other transportation related tax thing that's going to fund this stupid stuff. Um, but that's what they do.
Yeah, that does seem pretty silly. I forgot about that, but yeah, thanks for bringing that up. I saw you and like a lot of other people,
Hmm.
but yeah, I think you probably were the first one that I saw post about it. So that's why you got to pay attention to Oregon Roundup.
Yeah, absolutely.
um, okay, I just have a couple like new ones here. I think I went through my old goofy ones
Yep.
last time
Yep.
probably, but what do you are you what's your alarm situation? Do you use a normal alarm like your phone alarm or something?
Yeah. So
Or do you just
almost every day I don't set an alarm
oh, okay.
because I've always been like kind of an early riser.
Yeah.
So I have no problem getting up on time. When I do know I have to get up earlier than usual, I'll set just my phone alarm.
Okay.
I don't even have in my bedroom, I don't even have like a clock. I just have my phone, which I know you're
Yeah.
not supposed to keep it close to your bed and all that,
I
but
know I do it. Everyone does it.
yeah.
It's hard not to. I'm always paranoid about it too because it's like I started digging into it one time and I think all the phone like manuals say like keep it at least like a certain feet away because
Oh
of the
yeah.
radiation and all that
Yeah.
stuff. But I don't know. I try to just keep it more for distraction
No, I mean,
reasons away.
I'm
But
definitely high risk brain cancer guy, I think, because
yeah,
I'm always close to my phone.
yeah, yeah. Okay. The other new one I've been asking is, do you have a preference between the pink and white sprinkle cookies, the
Yes.
old what are they called?
Like they're animal shaped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you like those or the train box animal cracker ones? Do you have a preference between
Oh,
those?
the train box.
Okay.
Because the train box don't have the icing on them, right?
Right, right.
I'm more of an animal cracker
Okay.
slash cookie purist.
Yeah.
I prefer it without the sprinkles and the icing on
Yeah.
it.
I kind of lean that way, especially as I get older. It's like I don't need all the
Yeah,
fancy
the
sprinkles and stuff.
frosting, that's kind of that pure sugar
It's
is a
just
little
sugar,
too
yeah.
much for me.
Yeah.
When I was 10 years old, I'm
Yeah.
sure I loved it, but
Okay.
yeah.
I was gonna give you a chance. Last time I think I don't remember what you shouted. I always ask people a restaurant or some business. Is there some place in Bend you want to shout out, or here in Portland that you visited?
Yeah, let's see. Business to give a shout out to. A really great business in Bend if you're in town and looking for a place to have dinner is Zydeco, which is it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of a fancier restaurant right in downtown. Happens to be owned by a former state rep from over there named Sherry Helt and her husband Steve. And they are, first of all, they do great work. Like they get the shrimp appetizer if you go, and the staff is wonderful and they do a great job on their food. And they're extremely involved in the community. Like they are always doing stuff in
Events and all.
Bend
Yeah,
to try to help people that need help and try to do the right thing over there.
that's
So
cool.
that's a great business.
Yeah, this is kind of like going back to last time, but I'm guessing you haven't been to Cowboy Dinner Tree since last time we
No,
saw.
I have not,
Okay.
but I want to get down there.
Do you know? I'm curious. Do you know? Because I reached out to him a long time ago when I first started the show, but I know the guy has his beef company, which is like 1887 Beef, I think, or
Okay.
something. Are you familiar with that at all?
No.
Okay. I'm trying to. I'll get in touch with him or something, but I don't know if this would ever happen. But I'm trying to connect him with the James Beard Market, which they're trying to open up here in Portland, and
Mm-hmm.
try to get his beef in
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's possible, but I've just heard like I know people up here that buy it, and they said it's
It's good.
fantastic
I'm
beef
sure
and
it's
stuff.
good. Silver
So
Lake beef. It's
yeah,
got to be good. I think I've been on their Facebook page
okay.
before. They don't have the most like
It's not, yeah.
updated like
I remember at one time I looked and they're like, if you want to buy it, there's just like a mailbox you send money
yeah,
to,
yeah.
and then like you'll just get the beef or something. It's like it's not very modern, but
Yeah, yeah, no, that's a great idea though. They do good work. I need to. My boys are 8 and 10 now, so they're of the age that I think they could make a dent in those states. So I need to get
they're
them
pretty
down there.
massive, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, thanks for coming by today, Jeff. You're always welcome back. Yeah, we'll have to do
Thanks,
another episode
Andy.
next time you're in town.
Yeah, appreciate you having me back.
Yeah.